In this course, I'm going to take you from a complete beginner to a pro at building out AI agents and workflows with N8N, the fastest growing no-code software out there. My name is Adrian, and over the last decade, I've spent millions of dollars on online marketing on all the major platforms, including Meta, Google, and AppLovin. I'm making this video now because it is the perfect opportunity, whether you're trying to amass millions of followers with organic AI content, or you're an online marketer trying to make millions in profit with this new wave. By the end of this 2-hour video, you will be able to hook up every single imaginable AI service out there, including Google's VO3 videos, Flux Kontext for images, and AI agents that make prompts and ad copy for you on autopilot. This is by far the most complicated video I've ever made. It took me over 20 hours, and the entire thing has no sponsors or plugs or any sort of interruptions. And I have no paid courses or memberships. All I ask in return is if you're going to be using N8N and you're new, that you use my affiliate link in the description where I will be credited. My second ask is if you got any value out of this, that you join my email newsletter at adrian.co/subscribe. You follow me if you have an X on x.com/mentor. And if you want to stay even more in the loop, that you subscribe to my Telegram updates channel. This course starts at the very beginning and goes into depth, making sure that anyone, no matter what your technical experience is, can succeed. My number one recommendation is to watch the entire tutorial on 2x speed and then go back to the parts that you want to build yourself on N8N. I created this entire tutorial specifically to be shared with beginners or anyone that you think can take advantage of AI in 2025. I promise you that right now is the best time possible to learn how to create AI agents, as new technology that is groundbreaking is coming out every week. Enjoy the tutorial and subscribe if you get any value. So essentially, N8N is a workflow platform or an automation platform. It's very similar to Zapier, which is used in a lot of businesses, as well as Make.com, which is another pretty big rival. I've found that N8N has two major advantages. The first one is how well it's integrated with all the new AI services. And then the second major advantage is the pricing. It is substantially cheaper than Zapier that charges you for every single action that happens on your workflows. And they're very flexible. They have plans where they can host everything for $20 per month, or it's even open source enough that you can host it on your own server, in which I will be showing you at the end of this video, for only $6 per month. Compared to Zapier, here's an example of Zapier's plan. It scales like crazy, and when you have 50,000 tasks per month, which keep in mind may only be a few thousand workflow runs, will cost you up to $400 per month. And this is not an exaggeration. Most of the marketing clients I work with are paying at least $150 per month to Zapier. And to further illustrate the point, you can see in this Google search trends data that N8N has gone from virtually nothing a year ago to breaking even with Zapier traffic to exploding over the last few months. So in summary, all these tools are extremely useful, but N8N is by far the best one to be learning right now. So now the question really is, what is a workflow automation? If we scroll down here, we can see a nice demo of what N8N looks like in action and what a workflow is. So a workflow starts with a trigger. So for this example, a user will fill out a form, and then it goes to an AI agent. Now AI agents and workflows are very similar. It's really just kind of a technicality. I've called my workflows agents before when they're really workflows. But here the agent has all these tools, and it uses AI to determine what to do. And this is just one part of the workflow. Then it goes to the next one, which is a logic tree that goes either to this channel or this channel based on what happened in the agent. And then here it will populate something in Slack, most likely for the company to deal with. So that's the basics of a workflow automation. Some other examples of some really easy to understand ideas would be if someone enters their information on a Facebook ad to qualify for a product, you're probably going to want to pass that data to your CRM like HubSpot or Close, so you have a customer record of the person and everything that they responded. You might also want to hit up your sales reps via Slack or some other messaging tools so the sales reps get on them. You might want to do some welcome emails. You can do all this type of stuff using a workflow automation like N8N. So you could build these workflows for virtually anything, and the entire idea is to save time and have the computer do tasks that normally humans would do. So a lot of these cases you don't even need AI. Let's just say you're updating stats at the end of every day for your business. So the AIs can handle some of these tasks extremely well and make things that were completely impossible a few years ago totally doable without a human or any intervention. Alright, so now let's get into the actual platform. Here I'm logged in to my N8N account, and you can see the first tab is workflows. These are all the independent workflows that I created for YouTube videos in the past. The second tab is credentials. These are all the logins and API tokens to all the services that I use in my automations to power them. I'll go more into depth on how the credentials work in the future. The last tab we have is executions. This is tracking every time our workflows are ran, and this is really good to look back into if there's any issues or debugging that needs to be done. Okay, so now I'm going to be creating a new workflow, and you can see it's named workflow 6. We're just going to change it to demo. And then the first thing you're going to need is a trigger. So I'm going to hit this plus button right here, and you can see there's a lot of options. There's trigger manually. This will allow you to just click a button each time you want to run the workflow, but you will have to have the page open for that to work. You can do an app event. Something like if you send a message to a channel on Telegram, it will then start the workflow. You could do on a schedule. So this means that maybe at 6 p.m. every day, I want this workflow to run. You could do a webhook call, which is a little bit more complicated, but essentially if another service sends data to this service, it will start the workflow. You can do a on form submission where N8N will create a form where you can put like your name, phone number, whatever, and then when you hit submit, it will run the workflow. Then you can also execute your workflow from inside another workflow, which gets a little bit more complicated. And then the other one you can do is on chat message, and that's what we'll start, but that will create a little chat box in which we will type to the workflow to start the automation. So I'm going to be clicking that one right there. And we're going to be setting it up super simple. I'm just going to hit test chat right here, and the chat will appear at the bottom. So now that we have this node, the first thing is going to happen is the chat is going to be received. Then you can see there's a plus button with this wire right here, and when we click on it, we can create a new node. So for example, I'm going to do an OpenAI node, which will allow us to interface with ChatGPT and all of this stuff. And then for the action, I'm going to do message a model. So that's an extremely basic version of using ChatGPT. So here we finally have the giant setup of the node, where we have the input section on the left, which we currently have not sent a text message to the chat. And then we have the output, what this node is outputting after it's ran. And those are both blank because nothing has been executed. So the first thing you're going to need to see right here is the credentials. So what you're going to want to do is hit this little button, and as you can see, it's saying OpenAI account as one of my credentials, and then here is my API key. This one is very simple. All you have to do is enter your API key here, and then when you save it, you should be good to go. Here we are on platform.openai.com/usage. You're going to need a full OpenAI account, and as you can see, this month or today, I've spent 8 cents using the API. And then if I scroll down to here, I'll have API keys. So I'm just going to be creating a new key here, where that's all you're going to have to do. And then once you get that key, do not share it with anyone else. Super important because they can run up a bill on your account. And then you're going to go back here, paste it into here, and then hit save. Once you do that, you'll now have your OpenAI credential that you can connect any of your OpenAI nodes to, and it should run through your account. Keep in mind, you're going to need a full OpenAI account. You may need to verify your ID or mailing location or whatever the security that they require. And then you're also going to need a credit card attached so that they can bill you and you can actually use the model. So once we put the API key in, we can now click on this OpenAI account every time we want to run it, and we no longer have to deal with the key. That being said, we are interfacing with their API, meaning that we're not just going to chatgpt.com and typing in our question. Therefore, there's a different level of pricing when it comes to every time you ask it questions. Generally, I've noticed you get a good amount of responses for free, but unlike the chat interface, eventually they will start charging you, and depending on the model, it may cost a few cents per query. So the next option we have is what we want to send it. We can send it text, image, audio, all this stuff. We're going to go simple and just do text. The next thing is operation. We already selected message and model. That's another pretty basic one. And now we have to pick which model we want to use. I'll just be going with GPT-4. And then for the prompt, we can type in any prompt that we want to ask the model. So for example, how many calories are in an apple? So we're just going to be asking a super basic question to the interface to make sure that it works. And then the user role is user, pretty straightforward. We're going to simplify the output, and then we can also do output content as JSON, which will wrap it in more data, but we don't want that for now. So, and let me just type in the chat here then. Hello. So I text it hello. And then down here it answers. It's giving us a little more data than we necessarily need in the chat, but it's wrapping this with a bunch of information on the request. And then the content is just the response that the chat is actually giving us, and that is a medium-sized apple typically contains about 95 calories, and then some more metadata. So we got an answer, but it wasn't relevant really to the question that we asked in the chat. Okay, so now that our automation ran, we can look into it and see what was going on. So I'm going to open up the OpenAI node, and you can see now we have an input here. So we have the session ID, the action, and the chat input. And now these are all variables that we can move around, and that's super important. So then over here we have the output, and you can see it as a table. You can see it as a JSON file, which just has all these brackets, and then it has like role attached to assistant, content attached to, the response of the content we got from the AI. And then probably the easiest one is a schema to go through. And you can just take any of these variables, and we can be using them similar to using them over here in the next step. So you notice that we hard-coded how many calories are in an apple. We don't want a program that just answers that question every single time. Instead, I'm going to be deleting that text, and I'm going to be taking the chat input and putting it into the prompt. So you'll see right here that you have these double curly braces, and this is a variable. So every time, instead of inputting this, it's going to be inputting hello or whatever is typed. So whatever we type in is going to turn into this variable. This variable is going to be passed to the prompt, and then that is the prompt that's going to be asked to ChatGPT, and then it's going to respond to what we say. So now instead of telling us how many calories are in an apple, it's going to be telling us the answer to whatever question that we ask it. So I'm going to X out of that node, and then keep in mind right here, you definitely want to save. This is not going to auto save for you. So if my browser was to crash right now, everything would be lost until I saved. So that's super important. Now that we saved, we can ask it a message like, how many calories are in an orange? And now when we send this through, it's going to go to the OpenAI model, and you can see it's now responding with a medium-sized orange typically contains 60 to 80 calories. So this is super important because now the model is finally interfacing with the chat and not just what the prompt was that was given there previously. As you can see, here's the prompt. The variable how many calories are in an orange was passed through, and everything was good to go. Congratulations, you now have your first working N8N workflow. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to erase this when chat received, and it's going to say we need a new trigger, and I'm going to show you how to connect this to another tool. So we're going to do Telegram, click that right there, and then the next thing we're going to do is on message. So you'll see over here I already have my Telegram account, so I'm going to open up the credentials, and you're going to need an access token, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Okay, so on Telegram, if you don't already have an account, I highly recommend you use it. It's super easy to interface with AI and N8N. You're just going to search for the bot father account, do /new bot, name your bot, and then it's going to respond with your bot. You can click here to message it, and then below this is going to be your API token. You're going to take that token and put that in N8N. Okay, so I previously put my API token in here, so I should be good. And then it's going to be on trigger message. So I'm just going to test this step, and it's going to wait for me to message my bot. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I now sent the message through Telegram, and you can see right here that the text is hello. So I'm going to be closing this down. And now, as you can see, this node right here is not connected. So what I'm going to do is just drag it to the next node. They will, by default, if you hit the plus, be connected, but you can always break them off by hitting that trash can, and then you can connect them in any way. So I'm now going to be connecting this to the API, OpenAI API node. We're going to open that up, and you can see right here, no longer is our variable from the old chat visible. You can see it's red, meaning it's undefined and it's not going to work. So we're going to be deleting that, and then we're going to be dragging in this new text variable into the prompt. So now, instead of getting the message from the chat that is on N8N's website, we're going to be getting it from the Telegram chat. So then I'm going to be testing just this step here. So I hit it, and it should be responding to hello. So yes, the content is now, how can I assist you today? So that's good, except for now we want to send it back to Telegram so that we actually get the response on the Telegram app. So I'm going to be closing this. I'm going to be hitting plus after the OpenAI node. I'm going to be searching Telegram. We're going to be sending a message. We're going to be sending a text message, so I'm just going to pop that up here. You'll see we have the Telegram account connected by default. The resource is going to be a message. It's going to be send message. For the chat ID, we're going to go into the input fields. We're going to go all the way down to chat, and we're going to pull in that chat ID because we want to respond to the same chat that the message came in. So we're just going to be pulling in that variable. And then for text, we're going to go to the OpenAI node, and there's going to be the content. So we're just going to drag that in there. Now this node is instructed to send to the same chat the response that we got from OpenAI. So I'm just going to be hitting test step right here, and it should be good. I think I got the message, and now I'm going to open up both platforms. Okay, so now we have the Telegram message on the side right here, and then we have the automation. Now I'm going to save and give you some clarification. When we're running all these test workflows, you'll see them in the executions right here, and everything is good. But these are not considered actual active workflows because they're done in the test environment, meaning they show up in this interface right here, as you can see it going. If we want to turn it active, we'll just flip this switch into active, and it'll tell us that the workflow is active and it's counting towards our credits. Granted, I think on the basic plan we have like 3,000, so we shouldn't run out. But it's just a good clarification to understand how that works. So for example, if I turn it off, I can do a test workflow. In the test workflow, it's going to wait for a response. So I'll just send it hi. It's now getting the response, and it's going through and it's responding to me. But if I send another hi, for example, it's not going to get it because it's not waiting actively for a response, either for the test or the active. So we're going to pop it active. So now, as you can see, it responds to me. And now I can ask it any basic question like, please write me a quick happy birthday paragraph to my friend Chris. Just complete random example. But in the background, it's going to be analyzing this, and then there you go. That's the response. So that's pretty cool. As long as this workflow is active, I can message it, and it will respond using my OpenAI account and my N8N account, and it essentially turned my Telegram into a ChatGPT assistant. Now, obviously, this is a super simple workflow, but you've finally created something that genuinely can provide value to people. And I'll show you another cool workflow that I made that works off of a similar model with Telegram and generates me avatars. Hey everyone, I'm really excited to share this AI UGC agent that I built. If you thought the beginning of the video was me, then my AI agent has you fooled. I'm actually lying down on my bed, chilling, sending my Telegram voice memos, and it's creating studio level UGC content of me while I could be out and about or wherever I want to be. It's hands down one of the most useful tools I've created for content creators, marketers, and online business owners. It's hands down one of the most useful tools I've created for content creators, marketers, and online business owners. So I just showed you that because it's a demo of what's possible in N8N, and it also utilizes a lot of the skills we just learned. It starts with a Telegram trigger, and it ends with a send video to Telegram. The only difference is there's a lot of processing when it comes to taking the audio file, converting it, sending it to an AI platform, and then sending that video back. But you got the beginning and end of that. If you want to do this entire tutorial, I'll have it linked below, but I'll also be going through all the concepts in the middle so that by the time you're done with this video, you could build it on your own. Okay, now that we have the basics of all that, I'm going to show you a few new things. So to start, I'm going to delete everything that we have here, and I'm going to start with a form, N8N form. And we're going to start on a new N8N form event. So here you can see the on form submission. It's going to make a test and production URL. You can have an authentication, meaning kind of like a password. We're not going to have that. We're just going to name our form test and be like, this is a test. And then you have your field names, and you can create more field names and form elements. So we're going to have the first one, which is going to be first name. And then the element type is going to be text, so they're just going to type in text in that field. And then we can put a placeholder so they understand what it looks like, and we can make it required. Now for the next one, we can put email. So I'll just put email. And then the same thing, we're going to have text, and then we can just do, I'll just put my email, for example, make that required, and then we should be good to go. Now I'm going to hit test step, and you'll see, hopefully my screen recorder gets it, you'll see it pops up where you can type your name and your email. And obviously the placeholders were just there to show people. For example, we hit submit, and then we go back here, and you can see it's outputting the name, email when it was submitted. So that's pretty simple. The only other thing you'd really do is add more things to your form or change the type. So you can do a date picker, you can do email, which is actually the one we should probably do for this one, which will make sure that there's an @ sign and everything for that. And then the other options we have are a file. You can upload a file, hidden field, password so you don't see it, all those different options. And I actually ran into a bug when I did this, so I saved my file and then I refreshed the page. Every once in a while something doesn't work. I recommend you reload it. Nothing is perfect with N8N. Anyways, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to test it again. Okay, the form pops up. One more time, I'm going to type my name and my email. Once I have that, I'm going to hit submit, and then you'll see that that is green, meaning it went through. I click on it, and you can see this information. Now, one cool thing you could do is when you right click, you can hit pin. What pinning will do is it will save the values in here as an output every time it runs to this node. So it's no longer going to ask me, and this is mostly for testing. And this is very important when you don't want to have to do something over and over again. So now that this node is pinned, it's just automatically going to pass this output to the next step, and it's no longer going to ask us for the form until we unpin it by clicking right there. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to hit plus, and over here we're going to type Sheets, and we're going to go to Google Sheets. Google Sheets are super important because you can store data here super easy, and pretty much everyone has a Google account because they're free. So we're going to do append row in sheet. So what that's going to do is it's going to add a new row to an existing Google Sheet. Now the first thing you're going to need here, yet again, is the credentials. Now if you're not self-hosting, it's super simple. All you're going to have to do is click sign in with Google, connect your account, authorize everything, and you should be good to go. Now oftentimes with these Google things, or if you're self-hosting, you're going to need to do a lot more complicated version of this, and I will be linking that as a segment at the end of this video, teaching you how to connect all your Google accounts if there's no option to just simply sign in with Google here. So we're just going to hit X because we're signed in already. Okay, so it's a sheet within document, and we're appending row. So let's get the document, which just means the file. I have this one called N8N test that I made for this. and that is right here, and you'll see the default is sheet 1, so I just left it as that, and you'll see sheet 1 shows up right here. And now it's trying to get the columns. So what we're going to do right here is we're going to add first name, and then for the second one we're going to say email, and then for the third one we're going to say time submitted. So here's the 3 columns. We can bold them and we can freeze row 1 so that it looks nice. And now we're going to go back to N8N and we are going to let it fetch the columns again, and there you can see we have the first name column, the email column, and the time submitted column. We're going to have this as manual, and then it's as simple as this. We're just going to drag the variable from our form submission into first name. We're going to drag the second variable into email, and we are going to drag the third variable submitted at into time submitted. Now what's really important right here, something that I haven't talked about yet, is all these variables are dynamic on 2 things. They're dynamic on what the node is named, so you can rename these nodes here. So it's make sure to give them the name that you want or to keep it how it is. And same with this. This node right here has the on form submission, and then it also has these things. So first name. So if I said first names or something, it would change the variable name, which we don't want to do because that will break the link, and then no longer will this link to the actual name. It will just error out. Now that we have that all explained, we have all 3 variables here. I should be able to hit test step right here. It executes, and once it executes, it will tell us that it's successful. And then you go to the sheet here, and now our data is in the sheet. So this is super useful if you want to log anything onto a database that you can reference into the future. Now you can use actual real databases with this, but for most of what we're doing with prompts and everything, it's totally okay to store these in a Google Doc in this format. So now to test this one more time, we're just going to be right clicking, hitting unpin. Then we're going to hit test workflow here. It's going to pop this up. I'm going to type Chris and then chris@gmail.com. And you can see when I hit submit here, it will move to the next step, and then it will enter that into our database on Google Sheets right here. So now I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I'm actually going to trash can the original trigger, start a new one. So I'm just going to take the trigger manual, and then we're going to link that to a new node, which is going to be the AI agent node. So we'll go over that, and essentially what we're going to do is use this AI agent node to create prompts and then have those prompts go to our Google Doc. So let me just set this up. Okay, so I set this up and I'll show you how to do it. I'm going to open this right now. You can see the first thing this AI agent is saying is it wants a source for a prompt, and we're just going to say define below, which means it's going to use this thing right here. And the prompt is just going to say create a prompt with the theme of a dog. So that's what the goal of this AI is. And then we're going to also open this require specific output format on, and I'll show you that in a second. And then the last thing we're going to need to do is enable the system message, which will be around here. And then I just typed this one in. For example, you are an agent that is designed to come up with text prompts for images that are created from a text image AI model. Each prompt should be around 4 sentences and describe the background and main object if applicable. So super simple. It's just going to make prompts for us, and then we just have to switch this to give it a different type of prompt for the image. Now I'm going to go out here, and what you're going to have to do is hit the little plus button for the chat model, which is going to pop this up. Now we already showed you how to do OpenAI account. You can connect your other accounts like Claude or something like that, but for this we're just going to do OpenAI GPT-4o mini. Should be super simple. This is just a very basic version of ChatGPT. And then for the output parser, which is going to be a new thing that pops up, you're going to want to hit the plus, and then you want to select structured output parser. And basically we are selecting from JSON example. So this is JSON, is super simple. I'm actually going to take the S out of this because we're only going to do one prompt now. So it's just going to return a variable called prompt, and then it's going to put the prompt there. So it's super simple. As you can see, it says S, but when we run it again, it should be good. I ran this one time, and this is the prompt that it came up with. And now that we have that, we can move on to the Google Sheets. But before we do that, let me open it one more time, and I'm going to hit test step again now that I changed the output to make sure that we don't have any mistakes. So yeah, we have prompt, and then it created a different prompt right here. And now we're going to go to the Google Sheets, and we're going to actually go to here, and we're going to change up these variables. So now that I showed you how to store the data, we can delete that. And now we're going to do prompt for the first column, and then for the second column we're going to say run, and then for the third column we'll say URL, and we'll have that for later. And now that we go over here, let's flick it back to manual, and you can see it has these three. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the prompt, we're going to put the prompt in here, and then for run we're going to say to do. This is just a code that I'm putting in so that later in the future when we reference it, it shows that it's not done yet in terms of rendering that actual image. And then for URL, we don't need to put anything right here, but I can do a test step right here, and you'll see in a second that now we have the prompt in here, and then we have to do. So in this case, it only created one prompt, and it can get a little bit tricky if you wanted to create a bunch at once. And here I am on another video that I created, and this is kind of a similar mode. We have this OpenAI node right here, and it's basically creating a bunch with line breaks, but then we're sending this to this code block that I had created by an AI, which basically uses JavaScript to split it into a bunch of objects, and then all those objects, get sent on Telegram in this case, but they could be sent to the Google Sheet. It's a little bit more complex. I'll be going into examples like this later on in the future, but for now we have this agent that's spun up. It's giving us one prompt, and then we're putting it into the Google Doc. So let me just test this workflow one more time. You'll see the AI is running, and you'll see that it just created another prompt. So then I can click it here, and most of the time you're not going to need a ton of prompts, but if you do, there'll be better ways to rig this up. But as you can see, it's creating more and more. So we have 3 right here. Now we can go in here and we can change the theme, create a prompt with the theme of, and we can say people at a party. So this is going to give us a completely different output. So once we have this, I'm going to hit test workflow one more time. And as you see, it will go into the Google Docs, and let's see what our description is. So yeah, this is a completely different description, but we have all those prompts. This is the super simple version. I'm going to go into a more complicated version where it's going to reference some good prompts for maybe text to video where you need them in a certain type of theme. But for now, we have our little idea agent working, and it's giving us a ton of ideas. And now I'm going to show you how to take those prompts and actually generate them into images and put those into your doc. Okay, before we do that, I'm actually going to show you one more thing, and that is how to loop in a more manual way. So right here, I'm going to hit plus, then I'm going to go to the edit fields /set, and then that's going to allow, I can do manual mapping, and then when I click here, I can type a name of count, and I can put a value of 1. And then over here is string. String is basically a short string of text, and then you have number, boolean, array. So we're going to do number just because we're working with numbers here. So now that we have this field and we have count number 1, just going to test that, and then you see we have this weird bug right here. So actually I'm going to hit save. Usually when I get this bug right here, it just requires me to refresh the page, and then we should be good. So let me just test this once more, and then yeah, we have count 1 there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add one more element, and then that element is just going to be an if. So then we're going to take this count right here, and then instead of equal to, we're going to go down to the numbers, and we're going to say is greater than or equal to, and then we're just going to put the number 5 here. So what this is going to do is basically run this 5 times every time that we hit test workflow, and this will speed things up quite a bit. So I'm just going to exit out of here, and then you'll see we have these 2 right here, the same ones that we started with, and then we're just going to hit the plus one more time here, and we're going to have to do one more set, which should pop up like this, and then we're going to have to execute the previous nodes to have this work. And I did a little bit of a bug here. It was supposed to be less than or equal to, so that it runs 5 times. Now we're going to go back over here to the edit fields. Now we're going to do test. This time it should actually be true, and it will get to this point. Okay, so now that I open this back up, you'll see we have the past. So now I just clicked here to get these two things to pop up. And then for the name, we're just going to type count. And then for the value, I actually used Claude to get me this. But essentially, I'm just going to pop this value in right here. So we're just taking our variable name and then adding 1 with these two curly braces. A little bit confusing. Even I had to use AI to get this to work. But then we're just going to take this if statement count right here. We just need to get it to, yep, right there. And then we should test this step. And then you see count is 2. So each time it goes through, it's just iterating count. And then once it hits 5, it will no longer go through the loop. And all we have to do is drag this to the if statement. So you can see, essentially it's going to go from the beginning to the fields. It's going to set count at 1. Then it's going to run through, it's going to create our prompt. Then it's going to set count 1 more, so it's going to be 2. Then it's going to go back, 2 is less than 5, and as you can see, it's going to loop that many times. So now let's just go into this AI agent and create a prompt, people with the theme of dogs. I'm just going to switch this back to dogs, and then I'm going to go back into this sheet, and then I'm going to take out the non-dog prompts for the next part. And then right here, I'm going to hit test workflow, and you'll see it's just going to iterate through. It's going to create that prompt, put it on the sheet. Then it's going to go to this next one. And then quick bug right here, I noticed. I'm going to open this up. We need this to output a number, not a string. So I'm going to test it again, and this time it should go more than once. So there we go. It's adding it once. Then it's going to edit it. It's going to add it again. And it's just going to keep going until we hit that threshold of 5. And we should have tons of prompts. I'm going to go to the sheet right here. You can see new ones are coming in. Got another one right there. And as you can see, so now we've simply created a loop, a little bit more complicated than I think it needs to be. But this is an easy way to just loop over something a few times. Okay, so now that we have this, I'm going to start a new project, and I'm going to show you how to take these prompts and actually render them through a service. So we're just going to be hitting this plus here for workflow, creating a new one in personal, and then in this workflow, I'll just name it demo 2. And then we're going to start with a trigger manual, and then after that, we're going to do a Google Sheet node. So I'm going to do a node for rows in sheet so we can retrieve those prompts that we had previously made. And then we're just going to have to connect to the same file that we had before, which was N8N test. So I'm just going to do that now. It's on sheet 1. And then you'll see you have some more settings here. So we're just going to click add to filter. It'll pop this open, and then we can choose which column we want. So if you keep in mind, we have our run is our basically status column for this. So I'm going to do run, and then I'm going to do value to do, which will mean it will match up to everything that says to do on this sheet. And then another thing we can do right here as an additional option is we can return only the first matching row. So I'm going to do this to make it more simple, and then we can go back and make it so it'll edit and create all the images at once. But for now, it's just going to return the first row. So we're going to be testing that, and it should be getting this prompt right here, and that's exactly what it did. And it's also giving us the row number that we can use later if we want to change that column in the future. Okay, and now we got to an extremely important part that's very crucial for almost all of the automations I create. So we're going to hit that plus, and then we're going to do an HTTP request node. This is an extremely popular node that we're going to use to interface with other companies' APIs. And if you don't know what an API is, ChatGPT has an explanation right here. You can pause and read it, or ask yourself and ask follow-up questions or whatever you want. Essentially, it's an application programming interface. And in short, basically what we're going to be using it for is just simply sending requests to other servers to do our AI stuff. We're going to request the result from them and take that back over the next step. So for the methods, you can do a get, you can do a post, you can do all these different ones. Pretty much most of the ones we're going to be doing are post and get. Basically, post means we're sending something to someone, and then get just means we're receiving some information back from them. And for these services, pretty much everyone nowadays has an API. And part of the reason why we're using APIs instead of doing it ourselves is these models are extremely big and setting them up costs tons of money. So if it costs you 50 cents, for example, to render a Kling video, that means they probably are rendering thousands and thousands, and they have $1 million a month infrastructure budgets where they've set up all these models on servers and they've optimized that really well. So instead of us trying to get in and do it all ourselves, all we're going to do is go to, essentially, the analogy could be like a restaurant. Instead of making the food ourselves, if we don't have a kitchen or a good enough kitchen, we're just going to be ordering from other people's restaurants and getting it delivered to us. And in this analogy, DoorDash is FAL.ai and Uber Eats is Replicate.com. Keep in mind, a lot of companies can have their own APIs hosted on their websites, but these are aggregators where you make an account, you load up some money on it, and then you can use all the services that they provide. So for example, we have Hailuo 2, ByteDance Seed, VO3, Kling 2, Flux Pro, and then pretty much all the same ones on Replicate 2. You can kind of go with whichever one you want. In this tutorial, I'm going to go with FAL because I've had a lot of great experiences using that platform, but Replicate is great too. And basically, once you make an account on either one of these and set up the credentials, you can use all of the services extremely easily. Okay, so I'm going to be teaching you how to set this up, but keep in mind, once you learn this, you can adapt this to every single API on the platform. So I'm going to be talking in generalized terms and kind of going through all the settings so you really understand. Okay, so for example, we clicked on Flux Kontext and it's doing /max. So essentially Flux Pro is a really great editing and image generator, and it's relatively cheap to use. I believe the max version is 8 cents. They have even cheaper versions before, but this one is extremely high quality. And I'm basically going to show you how FAL sets everything up once you make an account. So we're going to be on this page. First, they have the playground. So basically the playground is here so you can test the model without actually having to do it in N8N or your code or whatever. So if you want to generate something here, you can just do it by running it. And keep in mind, it will cost you money because you're running this on your own dime, but you're not going to have to subscribe to every service like is very common. So you can do whatever you want here, and then you can go to the request tab and it will show you your result there. But if you want to go to your history, basically, you just go to requests and you can filter by whatever you want. And as you can see, I did a bunch of requests and I use this for my thumbnails to try to get good ones. You know, basically adding a hat, changing the color. I was never even wearing a suit. I just replaced it for my t-shirt a while ago. And as you can see, this is a great page and you're going to need to know to go here if you have an issue. So if something breaks and it doesn't give you the image, for example, you're going to go here and you're going to kind of see why. It'll say like failed for X reason. There's so many reasons it could fail. It could be filtered out because it thinks you're trying to do nudity or something, and your code or your automation could be completely perfect and it's just flagged right here. So the next tab that's super important is this API tab, because that's essentially what we're connecting to. So there's going to be this little drop down right here, and we're going to be using the HTTP just because we're using the HTTP node, and that's how N8N is working. And if you scroll down, there'll be a place where it shows you how to submit a request. So this is the code to submit a request, and sometimes you can copy this in and just do the import curl command. However, the ones on here are not properly formatted for N8N, so it's not going to work, but sometimes you can just do that and bypass a lot. But there's going to be a lot of things you're going to want to set up in the way I do, and I'll kind of tell you why. But the key points you're going to want to know: the URL. So the URL is right here, so I'll be able to copy this in to the URL, and this is going to be the exact point that we're going to need to reach to send that command. So this is basically saying we want to do a Flux Kontext max command. And one thing before I actually do that is to note we're on the editing one right now, so this is just for editing. We're going to want to do a text to image, and then keep in mind there's pro and max. So this little thing right here is kind of like a bundle of all these different services that we can use that are all by the same people and called Flux Kontext. So Pro, I believe, is the cheaper one, Max is more expensive. These are text to images versus editing, meaning these ones you actually give it images as a source. So for now, we're going to want to do text to image, and the Pro, I believe, is the cheaper model. Let's see. Yeah, this one is only 4 cents, as you can see here. And if we go to the API and scroll down, you'll see we have a different URL. So this is the URL we're going to want to copy. So for whatever model you want to use, you just go to the page, go to submit a request, and this is what you're going to need to do. And then for the header, you're going to want to do this in the credentials on N8N. This is super important, and I'm going to walk you through it now. Now that we're back on N8N, you see this authentication. It's kind of similar to how we set up our Google account. What you're going to want to do pretty much every single time is the generic credential type, and you're going to do header auth. So basically what's happening in the background here is we're going to be sending part of our request is going to be essentially the username and password, but it's going to be the API key in this instance, so that it logs through our account and not someone else's. And obviously, because it costs them money, you need to be authenticated into your correct account. So I'm going to hit this edit right here. Actually, sorry, one sec. It chose replicate for me. These are going to be all your logins. So I have FAL right here already. What you're going to do is hit create new credentials here, because you won't have it yet, but I'll be editing to show you how it is. So up here, you're going to want to type FAL, and this is going to be your login. And once you do this once, you can do it for every node. In most automations, you're going to have like 5 or 10 nodes. So you want to do it this way. You really, really want to. So the name is going to be authorization. And if you want to know how I found that out, I just found that right here. So authorization is the first part. And then the second part is key, space, and then your API key. So right here, essentially, I just have typed in capital KEY space, and then I paste my API key. Now to get your API key, I'm going to go back to FAL and show you. So on FAL, you're just going to click on your account right here, and then you're going to go over to API keys. And then if you don't already have one, you're just going to do add. Keep in mind, the key is hidden here, and that's for a good reason. If someone ever sees your key, they can just drain your entire account, or they could potentially ban your account. So you do not want to share that, and that's why we're creating it in a credential. So once you have that key, you're going to type in capital KEY space, and then paste your key. And it should look just like it does right here with your key instead. And then once you have that, you can save this, and then FAL, so you see right here, will always be routed through my account. So the next time I need to request my thing right after I do it, I'm going to be using this same header auth. So these 3 things are going to look the same almost every single time. Now, one important thing, you could send this manually as a header right here, but it's going to be harder because every time you do, you're going to have to type it in manually, opposed to here where you can just select it as your pre-saved FAL login. And another extremely important thing is if you put it in the header and then you send your template, meaning we go out of here and we do download and we send the template, it's going to have your key in the data, which is extremely bad. Meaning if I was to upload it onto my YouTube video and I saved it that way, then everyone can use my account and use my money. And I definitely don't want that. So it's super important that you do the authentication correctly, generic credential type header auth. And one thing I will note, a lot of websites and other services like Replicate and a lot of other ones I've used, instead of doing key space your key, they have other things. It's usually not just your key. So you have to really look and make sure you're doing the right one. Most other services, you have to type bearer space your key, but just keep in mind and make sure to look up. And if you ever get stuck, ask an LLM like ChatGPT or Claude for help, and usually you'll get some help pretty easily. But now I'm going to assume that you fully understand how these logins and authentications work, and every time you're interfacing with FAL, that you'll set it up correctly in this manner. Okay, so now we've figured out the whole header authentication. So now we're going to be sending body. This is the actual body of the request, the main part, what we actually want to happen. So you'll see right here, you have content type of JSON, and then you can use fields below or JSON. So I'll just go right over here. So for example, some things can take things in, some services can take things to different formats. This one is working on JSON, so we're going to keep it as JSON. And then right here, you have using fields below or JSON. So I'm going to have to explain JSON a little bit really quickly so you guys understand. But essentially this data right here is in JSON. And it's just really key value pairs. So you have prompt, and then you have what the actual prompt is. And you have this little format with the colon, and then commas, and all of this. So I'm just going to go over right here. This is ChatGPT's explanation. It actually knows that I just turned 30, which is super kind of creepy. But this is an explanation of like what JSON is. So it starts with the curly bracket here, and you end it, and each one is kind of closing out each. So this has variables inside variables. It's a little bit confusing. If you haven't done programming before, I'll be explaining it. I'll be doing it in a very simple way. But if you do get stuck, I recommend maybe looking into this for like 5 or 10 minutes so you kind of understand. But the basic concept here is that it's just value pairs. So for example, using JSON, I can go over here and I can copy this part in right here. And then it's going to be sending prompt and all of this. But this is harder to work with. To make it simple, we're going to use fields below. So how we're going to do that is we're just going to copy prompt right here, paste that into the name, and then the value would just be, this is the demo. So this is like what the demo image would be. So ordinarily, I'll paste it in, but we'll switch it. This is what we would paste as the value for prompt. But instead, like you learned previously, we can take the variables. So this is the Google Sheet variable from running before. So make sure you ran the last node so that it gives you the prompt right here. We're just going to be dragging in the prompt right here. And now it's as simple as they need to know what prompt to generate. So we just give it prompt, and then this is the prompt. And then as you can see here, no other variables are required. Sometimes if you look down, there's a lot of optional variables that can default. So for example, if you want a specific resolution, that may be possible, but you'd have to specify it by adding another parameter. So yeah, I scrolled down here and you can see here's a bunch of other options you can do. Prompt is the only required one. But for example, you could do number of images. It defaults to 1. You could have it generate your image like 5 times. You can do all these different things. Basically what you would do if you wanted to. So for example, the num images, you would hit add parameter and you put something like 4 here, and then it will generate you 4 results. But we're just going to go to the default and generate just 1. So now that we have it, we have this part set up, we have that part set up. We're going to be hitting test step, and hopefully things will be going well. And there we go. So you can see it's now in queue, and then we get all this information on if we can check the status. And I'm going to be showing you how to do this a simple way, and then later on I'll be doing it in a little bit better way that's less likely to crash. So now that we have this, one thing we can do too here is pin this data for now. So now if anything crashes, I'll also save right here, but if anything crashes, it will still have that data because we sent that request. It cost us the 4 cents, which is not a lot, but imagine if it was like $4, we would not want to have to resend in the testing process. And we're super close to finishing this. I know I went very slowly to go through all the details, but the next thing we're going to do is adding a wait node. So essentially what we're going to do is this request is going to take a little while. So for testing, if I do only 1 second and test it, because you have to test every single step along the way to get it to pass the variables to the next one, you'll see 1 second is fine. But realistically, setting this up, I think depending on the model, you'd kind of have to know based on either using the playground or estimations or something. But I think these models are pretty quick. They only take like 5 to 10 seconds, but we can just do 30 seconds to be safe. And I'm not sure if it's going to have me rerun it, but if it is, I'm just going to switch it to 1 again. And then what we're going to need to do is our second HTTP request. And then this one is going to be super simple. We're just going to be doing a GET, and we're going to be sending some of the data from the previous request. Okay, one thing I noticed when I tested this is it is going to run the wait command no matter what, so we're going to switch that back to 1 second. And then keep in mind here, you can rename all these nodes. For this demo, I'm not going to do it because it's going to switch up the variables. Do not rename in the middle of your process, rename in the beginning because all the dragged variables may break. But to fix that, all you have to do is go through and make sure that they're green instead of red. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. This one is going to be a GET request, and then keep in mind, generic credential type, header auth, and then make sure that it's connected to FAL. You're going to be doing this like 100 times. And we don't need any body because we're just doing a GET request. And you might wonder, what URL are we going to use? We're going to use the response URL. So it's pretty simple. When you make a request, it gives you all this data. It was in queue when we first did it. It should be done now because it's been a little while. But all this is like the information we can pull through with this request. Sometimes it will just give you an ID and you have to like tack the ID to the end of the request. But for this case, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to drag that variable in. As you can see, it's green, meaning it's working, and this is the actual URL that it's going to be doing. So we're going to hit test step here, and it's going to execute that 1 second wait. And then as you can see right here, we have this URL. So I can just new tab, and boom, this is the image. Keep in mind, it's been a while since we did the generator, but this was a dog themed image. And then here we have the dog. So we're really close to greatness now. The next thing that we're going to be doing is putting this back into the Google Sheet. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. So we're just going to hit plus right here, and then we're going to do Sheet, Google Sheets, and then we're going to do update, update row and sheet, and then make sure that we're connected to the same sheet that we were the whole time, and just let this load right here. And one thing we're going to do is this time we're going to have to match on row number because we only want to update the row that we generated the image for. And that means we're just going to scroll back in these variables, and you'll see row number is a variable that was taken when we did it in the first place. So that's going to correspond to row 2. So for the prompt, we want to leave the prompt alone because we just want it to stay the same as it was. And then for run, we can say something like done. Keep in mind, this is super important because if you don't change, we're going to go back right here. If you don't change this to do, then it'll just run the first one over and over again, and you'll just waste all your money on the same one. Then for URL, we're going to scroll back to the top. Just take that URL of the image from the last node, and then this is going to be that image right here. And then here is the magic. We're going to hit test step, and you're going to see it's going to work. And then boom, there we go. When we open this, we get the actual image. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I think FAL is pretty good about this, it keeps it for a while, but when you do these services, this image is hosted on a temporary file. So eventually they're going to delete it because they're expecting you to download it or use it. So it's good for automating, but keep in mind, if your thing disappears after a while, it's because like we're not paying for the hosting, we're just paying for the result. So once we get the result, usually they have like a 7-day or something time period that they hold on to your data. But just keep in mind that you want this actually download to one of your servers if you want to make sure that you actually keep the data in the future. But I just want to say congratulations. Not only do you have a prompt generator, but you're actually using an API and you've actually generated your first image. And we can just hop out of this. We're going to change this to 30 seconds and then show you how this works. So we generated that one during the test. It says done. So let's just test workflow one more time. It's going to be getting the second one now. And oops. Gotta remember to unpin this. If we kept this the same, we just make sure, yeah. If we pinned it, then it's just gonna give that photo every single time, and that's not what we want. Now we want new ones, so I'm gonna be running it, and as you can see, it made the request. Hopefully it works in 30 seconds, and then it will paste our result there. And after that, I'm going to show you how to loop this into batches to do multiple at the same time. And then we could do cool stuff like turning this image into a video or editing our own images and all that cool stuff. So let's just give it a second. And everything's looking good. As you can see, we have our next image generated and boom, another dog. So, you know, we could have whatever prompts you want. These are just demo prompts, but congratulations. You now have a prompt generator and an image generator that works completely, and you understand how every part works, which is super important because now you can use basically any API on file. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be doing is renaming all the nodes so it's easier to understand, and then we're going to be fixing the automation because a lot of the variables may have changed. So we're going to go to the Google Sheets one and we're going to rename that to get prompt from sheet. Rename that right here. For this HTTP request, so we're going to rename this to generate image. We're going to make sure that that is unpinned. It's unpinned. Then the weight, we can just keep that the same. And then this one, we can do get image. And then here we can do update sheet with URL. So now we have all these. So let's see if anything breaks when we run the process. So we're just going to be running it one more time. And it looks like the generation was good. Yep, it still has it. And then right here, actually everything is good here. It's just simply that we didn't wait long enough for the image to generate. So let me just run this test, give it a few more seconds. And there we go. We have the images or the image. Let me just run this. And it looks like nothing broke. So that's actually better than expected. As you can see, we have this third image now that we generated right here. Yet another dog. Okay, now everything is cleaned up, and when you hit test workflow, it will generate you one image. And that's pretty great, and you could switch this with the schedule trigger to run it every few minutes or whatever you wanted. But now I'm going to be showing you a little more efficient path to doing this. So what we're going to be doing is, instead of just getting one prompt from the sheet, I'm going to open this up, and we're going to no longer return first row matching. And then I'm going to test this step one more time to show you how it works. And then here's the main difference. Now you see there's one item. When you click this, there's only one instance of anything happening from here to here. But then from your sheet to your generate images, you have 6 items, which means this thing is going to happen 6 times moving forward instead of once. And this is a big change compared to everything else we've done, because previously we've only had one item at a time. And just to clarify, the reason why we have that is because in this sheet, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to-dos. So it's gotten all 6 of these. And then when I open the generate image node, you'll see that when clicking test workflow, we only did that once. Not that there's really a lot of data here. But over here, we have 6 items. And it's only showing the prompt for the last one. Even though there are 6, it will be going through all 6 at the same time. Okay, and for example, I'm going to go back, and now I named a few of these holds, so there should be only 3, and this is just so I can illustrate this point. But I'm going to retest this one more time, make sure that we get 3 items. 3 items is right there, and now I'm going to open up this generate image. And now the thing is, all 3 are going to happen at the same time, meaning all 3 requests are going to go to FAL at the same time. And let's just say you had 100. You don't want to do all 100 at the same time. Because it may crash the service. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in the generate image section, we're going to go to the bottom. We're going to click batching. Now this is the amount of items per batch. So we're going to do just one, meaning one request. And then down here we have how many milliseconds in between. So 1,000 is just 1 second. So we're going to up it to 10,000, which would be 10 seconds. So it's going to be running 1 for every 10 seconds. And that should be pretty good and not cause too many issues. And then here, I'm just going to take the weight amount, and we're no longer testing, so I'm going to do 45 seconds just to give it ample time. And then I'm going to be testing this. Keep in mind, we only have 3 right now. This should generate 3 more. So let's see if this works as intended. Okay, we got 3. It's going to be sending in 1 every 10 seconds. So this should take roughly 30 seconds. And then we're going to double check and wait for even 45 more seconds just to make absolutely sure that everything is good to go. And then we should update our sheet simultaneously with those three. And then we're going to go back to this. And then as you can see, we have 3 more done. One thing to note here too is we didn't do the batching for the get image, so we're sending all the requests to get the image at once. If we have issues with this, we should probably add the same batching parameters as we have here. But I'm going to be showing you one other way that you can do this too, which is also super nice, where you can kind of track it visually. So we're going to remove the batching element from right here. And then instead what we're going to do is hit the plus sign here and then type in loop over items in batches. That's going to create this, which could be a little bit confusing, but I'm just going to replace this one node. And what we're going to do is, instead of the done being here, we're going to cause the loop to go to the generate images, and then the final node right here, we're just going to attach to this loop. I'm going to click it right here, and you can see the batch size. So if you want to do one at a time, this is what you would do. And then as you can see, it's going to go through this loop over all of them until done. And at done, there's nothing else that's going to have to happen. But we're going to go to here, and we're going to just name these to do so that it has all 3. And I'll illustrate what this looks like. And let's lower this down to 30 seconds. And I'll just test this one more time. We'll hit test workflow here. You'll see it will grab all 3, and then each one it's going to individually go through and then loop it. So it's going to do one at a time. So this time it's going to take a little bit more. But these are just different ways that are very important to understand, because when you're automating, let's just say you're generating a video and it's costing you $5, you might be wanting to do it one at a time in case you have a mistake and it does 20 requests and boom, you just spent $100. Versus if you're doing something really cheap, you might want a bunch of them to happen at the same time. Anyways, I'm just going to fast forward till this is over, and I'll show you the result. And as you can see, it's looping through one more time. That's how it works, and I'll show you the result in a second. Okay, now it's finally looped through all 3 images. As you can see, we now have the 3 separate images, and you can see they're all pretty similar because our prompt generator didn't have very much instructions, but you can see it properly created all these. So now you know 2 ways to loop through and batch all your generations, and this applies for whatever you're doing. It doesn't just have to be images. You can do this when it comes to video or any other technology. Okay, for this next step, I'm going to teach you a few things. I hopped into this Flux Kontext tool that I built, and essentially this time we're using Replicate. It's the exact same as FAL. You just set up your different credentials. The only difference is for your API key, you enter bearer space your API key. I've already done this in the past, but we're doing this because it has this pre-built professional headshot API right here, and we're going to be using it in a very similar way. But one thing you'll notice is it only makes sense if you upload an image of yourself. So we're going to be handling an image through the N8N form. And as you can see, it only costs 4 cents. This is a demo output. It looks extremely good for something like LinkedIn. So this is actually a pretty strong use case, and it's probably very saturated now. But like a year ago, you probably could have made a lot of money creating a little microservice like this, because it would only cost you 4 cents and you could charge people substantially more for this and make it super convenient where they just upload their image on a form and it emails them the result. So now I'm going to be going through this and kind of showing how it works. So the first node we have right here, I'll open up right here, but we just have an image field, a gender field, and an email field. And you'll see I did this previously with an image I just took of myself. And you'll see that the output now, this is something that's new that we haven't covered yet. Instead of just outputting the JSON or the schema, which it has that information, we also now have this binary tab, and we have this capital I image. So this is an actual file. And just to show you how it works, I'm going to hit test workflow right here, and I'll show you that I'm picking this image I just took right here. And then we're going to be typing mail, and then we're going to be typing adrian@durso.io email address, and then I'm going to hit submit right here. And then, okay, it errored out because I probably need to fix the API keys. But this is the next one that's super important to learn about. This node right here, just named HTTP request, but this node is taking our image and uploading it to the internet. So we have an actual URL right here. And this is the easy way of doing it. I'll open this right now so you guys can see. So now we have the image up here. This is the extremely easy way to do it. And then I'll show you also how to do it with Google Drive, which could take a few more steps to set up, but is a little bit better to do. So here we have this service called ImageBB. And the reason I like this service is it's super simple. It's completely free. You just go to imagebb.com, imgbb.com, and then here you have my profile. These are all the images that were uploaded. This is the result from when I created that tutorial before. But you can just click here, go to API. I'll be resetting this, even though it's free, so it's not as important. You can see you get this API key completely for free. And the only difference right here is instead of doing a generic credential type with the headers, you just simply have your key in the URL. So I just used this exact one. I'll have all these templates and links to all the separate videos, so you can just grab this URL. But essentially, instead of having the credential, the API key in the header, it's just going to be in this URL. So as soon as we use this URL, it knows this is our account. And then here's the important part that I'm going to teach you on this. We have body content type form data, and here's the big thing. We need to upload this actual binary file that we have right here, because as of right now it just exists on N8N and it doesn't exist on the open internet. And for this API to work, we need to get an actual version that it can access. So as you can see right here, we're sending a body form data type. Then over here we have N8N binary file. So that's going to be this binary file we have. And then as you can see right here, we have the name. So this is what ImageBB is receiving. So they want image with a lowercase I. So that's the exact thing. Every time we use this, we're just going to be passing this image with the lowercase I. And then if you go down here, it says input data field name. So this is the actual data that we're uploading. And as you can see, it's a capital I image. And that is because of, I'll pop open this right here. This is the field name. So it's just naming it as a field name. Oftentimes, if you get data with like a GET request to a server or something, it will just save the output file as just named data. But in this case, because it's this form, it's capital, this one right here, it's a capital I image. So you need to make sure that it's exactly set up just like this. You have your API key for ImageBB. This is the quickest way for you to upload an image and get that URL. As you can see, the output has the display URL right here. And then this is the URL we're going to pass into Replicate. But it's very important that you understand how these binary files work so that we can take our own images and then send those to the services, not just get their image URL and work with that. Okay, and now we're on to this next step. When we run this, we actually had an error, and that's just because none male or female has to be lowercase. So what I did right now is I switched this actually from an option where you can just type whatever you want to hard coding male and female. So let me test this one more time, show you what it looks like. A little bit of a bug, but there we go. So now I'm going to click my image right here, and then we're going to select male. I'm just going to put my email address in right here. We're going to hit submit, and then as you can see, now it's working. And I'm going to open this up as it goes, and keep in mind we have replicate right here. Okay, good. So it did get a result, and I'm just going to be showing you that. So credentials, you're going to be adding another one, same thing, authorization. And then now that we're on replicate.com, I'll just go to the HTTP, and you'll see here you want bearer space your API key, same thing as file. Pretty easy to get that. Load that up with some credits. That's only if you want to do anything on Replicate. But now at this point, you will know how to handle images on your N8N, uploading them to the internet. You can also connect to Replicate using the stuff you learned here, and you can use all the services on Replicate. Now I'm going to be headed back to this, and you'll see it went completely through, and I'll show you on my email what it looks like. Okay, so we're over on my email. This is what it shows. I'll go through each step so you guys can understand how this works in a second. But here's my image, pretty good, looks a lot like me, has the suit, all from that source image right there. So pretty happy with that. So let's just go through kind of all these nodes and show you how it works a little bit faster now that you probably have a good understanding. So as you can see right here, we are specifying the headers. This was just because of the way that I added it. I don't think this is necessary right here. And then we're just sending a body content of JSON, and then we're just putting that image URL, and we're entering the URL from the last step right there. We're doing aspect ratio. So basically this, I probably created it with ChatGPT or the reference, but this is the JSON version of sending the request instead of the other way around, and that's kind of because everything is nested in this input setting right here. So in the future I'll show you kind of how to create some of this with LLMs like ChatGPT if you get stuck, but essentially we're sending in a file that's input, and then in that input it's going to have gender, and then it's going to take the information that was sent on the form, and then it's going to have the input image, and then we're going to give it the URL that we uploaded to ImageBB, and then we need aspect ratio, which is 1:1. So this is getting a little bit more intermediate. I'll kind of show you how to do this stuff in using an LLM to help you if you get a little bit stuck here, because it's getting a little bit more technical. Okay, quick clarification. For replicate, it's a little bit easier than FAL in this sense, where if we do an HTTP request, for example, and this is relevant to the last part that I was talking about, you can just take this, go to replicate, go to API, go to HTTP, and then this curl right here, you can just copy the entire thing. I'm going to be copying that there, going back to here, you'll see this import curl button right here. I'm going to paste that, hit import, and you'll see this is how I got it to import everything correctly. So basically that's just a format, and you'll notice right here it has the authorization and bearer in these fields right here. We're actually going to exit that out, and potentially even this one too, because you would be going to predefined credentials, or sorry, generic credentials, header auth right here, and then doing replicate, because you want your password to be stored as a N8N credential and not over here. But other than that, it will import all this for you, so you won't have to worry that you did it right or wrong. And then what we did is just, you know, take these out and change them. Actually, we do want those quotes. Change them with the variables by like dragging in the variables as I showed you over there. So just quick clarification, you can import the curls from replicate and some other services, and it will pre-fill all the information in here, making it a lot easier. That's the request, and then the next node is await. Pretty simple, 20 seconds. It's a pretty easy task to have done. And then over here we have the second request. So essentially when we sent the request and it went through, we have these URLs. So we have get right here. So I just dragged this in. So we're getting the get, which is a little bit confusing, but basically we're just trying to pull some more data from the service. So when we go to this other request, we are doing a get on this URL, which you can see is an image. So we have this as an image, meaning we could just send this to the person. The problem is replicate deletes the image relatively quickly, so they don't check their email for a little while. The image will disappear. So this is another form of controlling the data. So what we're going to do is a get request, and because we're doing a get request to a .png, which is what this output is, it's going to be downloading the PNG onto our N8N instance and defaulting it to a name of data. So you can see we have the output as data right here, and once we do that, we're going to be going to this, and now this is another ImageBB. So this is just like the node that's right here that I was talking about a little bit earlier. So basically what we're doing, instead of having it as image because the person uploaded it into the form, now we have it as named data because we downloaded it from replicate service. So same thing, we just copied that node. We have the same ImageBB upload. We're doing form data. Only difference is now it's named data because it's data here. So now we're uploading this to ImageBB, so now we control the link. So we have the link right here. And then finally, we're connecting Gmail. Super simple. You connect in the same way that you connect Google Sheets and all that, unless you're self-hosted. If you are self-hosted, then at the end of this video I will be explaining how to connect all the Google things yourself, creating your own authorization. But the main thing is we're just sending an email to whoever was on the form. It's just going to say, here's your portrait, and then here's the link. And then the link is going to be our image BP link. So we now can host the image and it's not just going to disappear. And then as you see, you get it right here. The user will get this email to the URL. Thing I want to point out is we're testing on this test workflow. The production workflow is right here, so we can copy this, and then when we activate this, anyone on the internet could effectively go to this URL. I'm going to be deactivating it obviously before I post this, but anyone could go to this URL and then they can enter a picture of themselves, their gender, their email, and then within a minute or two they'll get an email with that portrait. So that's effectively what this automation does. You know, you can copy it, you can use it for a different service, but the whole point of this coverage was really to show you how to handle those binary files, as well as show you how replicate works and all these nodes together to build something that's actually of more use. Okay, so another way to do it opposed to image BB and handle these files that you get personally either through a Telegram trigger or a form entry or anything like that is to do it on Google Drive. Now, Google Drive is a little bit more complicated, and one thing I'll teach you if you haven't done this before is you can just simply select nodes, do control copy, control paste, and it'll paste the exact nodes. It's extremely easy to do stuff like this, and it can save you a lot of time. I made demo file 3 right here because I'm going to be showing you how to upload an image onto Google Drive. And so we're just going to say test, and then for the field name we're just going to put image, and then we are going to do a file right here, and then we can make it required, but you can do anything like that. And then we are going to take this, wire it up to Google Drive, and now while I do this, I can choose my image. I'll just choose that same picture I just took of me. I'm going to hit submit like this, and on this Google Drive, now you'll see we have this file named image. And you'll see right here, you have to connect your Google Drive account, and this is why it's a little bit more complicated. You're eventually going to have to bite the bullet if you're self-hosted or not this time to connect Google Drive. So you're going to have to make your own OAuth with yourself. And that section will be at the end of the video. So go to the description, go to that part now, and actually fully understand it. And once you do that, you'll have your Google account drive connected here. And then we're going to do a resource file upload. And now it was named data in the other automation because the other one was named data. This one is capital image simply because we're doing it through that form we just created, but making sure that this name right here matches this, and we're in the binary file, meaning this is a file that's on the N8N server, and now we're going to be uploading it to Google Drive. So once those are matching, I'm just going to be hitting test step right here, and there we go. We can also put it somewhere other than the root folder. We can make a little folder in our Google account specifically for this program, but as you can see right there, we now have it uploaded, and now we just have to edit the permissions so that everyone else can access it so we can send it to another service. So we're going to go to this one right here, and then as you can see, we just pulled in the ID, which is just right here, and then we have file, operation, share connected to the same account, of course, and then we have role as reader for anyone. So this will allow us, once we run it right here, for any other service to access this file. One thing I'm going to note right here is it doesn't just give you a URL, which is a little bit annoying. What you're going to have to do is use this format right here where it's this Google Drive link, question mark export equals download and ID equals, and then have your ID. So you're going to have to custom make this link by inserting this part and then ending it with the ID that you have right here. So once you do that, and then you pass that to a service like Replicate or Fel, they will be able to access your file, and then all your data will be contained on your Google Drive. So I just wanted to include this part. Keep in mind it's going to take you a little while to connect your Google Drive, but once you have that, you'll have a nice, easy way of storing images, not using ImageBB, so that they're all on your Google Drive, and you can use that as essentially your database for any service that you're trying to make. Congratulations, you finally made it to this part. Now we're going to be generating some videos, and I'm going to show you the basics and some cool things you can do to improve your automations. Once I show you that will be on Hailuo to Min-Max right here, which is an API that you can use on FAL. There's a text to video, there's an image to video, there's Pro and Standard. We'll be doing text to video Pro, which will cost you 48 cents per 6-second video. It does not come with audio, but we will be using another API to attach the audio. I'm just going to run down this automation, explain these little if loops that will help you run into errors if your thing is not done generating the video. And then once we have this, we'll do one final project where I'll have a really good prompt generator for VO3. We'll create all the videos and then we'll stitch them together into one video file. But for now, let's work on this and I'll explain it really quick. So the first node is a get video idea. We're doing very similar to in the past. We simply have our prompt, and then we have our status of to do. So everything should look super simple here. We're returning only the first row right here. And then this node right here is our generate video. We're using this API as I explained before, making sure we're connected to our authorization for FAL. And then down here, all we're doing is simply sending it the prompt with the prompt right here. Now this is an important thing. Normally we have the wait, and we need to make sure that the wait time is ample, and when it comes to videos it does take a lot longer. So the one thing we're going to be doing here is we're going to be doing a get video node right here is just going to be a get, and then it's going to give us the status URL from this past node, and what that will basically do is tell us if it's complete or not. And the only difference right here is we inserted this if statement that you can just search up on there as an if, and then you have a false and a true. So we're just comparing this status that we're querying right before, and then if it's equal to completed, it goes back to the true. So it just goes, or not back, it goes forward to the true statement, which will then continue the automation. If false, it will then go back and wait 45 seconds. You can lower this time. Then it'll ask, is it completed or not? And the reason why this loop is super useful is if the video is not done and you get the URL, your automation will crash. And it's really important that it doesn't crash when you're doing a lot of stuff, because we're going to be attaching many things together in the next step. So once we know it's completed, we have this get URL, and all this is doing is getting the video URL of the output that we know is done, so it shouldn't crash. And then we're implementing the similar loop on this next part. This next part is adding audio. So we're using a service called Audio. Here it is on FAL. As you can see, you can go into the API to get all the information you need to run it, or you can just use my template, and it only costs a tenth of a cent per second. So it's extremely cheap. So I'm going to be going back to Min-Max right here. As you can see, we're just passing it the video URL, and then we're passing it the prompt too, so it kind of understands what the video was made on. And then same thing, we're doing a wait, and then we have the status, and then we're checking if the status is complete, because it has the same status set up for this API as well. If not, it's looping again till it finally does. Then it's finally going to get that video URL, which is going to include both the video and the video with the audio. So it's going to be the entire thing, the video with the audio. And then we're just going to be outputting that to the Google Sheet just like you did before, matching on row number, and then popping that URL in. So now let me run this live. I have this little ASMR prompt right here. It's made for VO3, but Hailuo should be able to do it. So let's see. Just going to be running this and showing you what the result is. Okay, so I had to cut to the end because of how long it was, and this is a perfect explanation of why these loops are so important. If I didn't have this loop and I put like 5 or 6 minutes, which is generally how long it takes to create the video, it just would have completely crashed because there was like some large queue on FAL and it was taking a really long time. As you can see, it did 34 loops of 45-second wait, so it was over 20 minutes of waiting. And then finally, as you can see here, the status finally turned into completed. Now that we have the variables, I'll just kind of show you again. You have the response URL right here, and then that gives us the output of our actual video file. Then that video file was passed into this audio function, the video file as well as the prompt, and then it finally made the video, and I have the video open right here. Just a simple ASMR video of cutting these glass waffles. Looks okay. The audio is pretty good, but ultimately this was really to show you that when you get this status, there will be in progress, there will be in queue, then processing, then completed. It's really good to have these loops so things don't break. And then this is a great example of a video generator that just takes your prompts and creates the individual videos. But obviously you want something better than that, and a lot of people have been asking. So in the next step, I'm going to create a full-on VO3 prompt generator. Then we're going to loop and create all the videos, and then we're going to stitch them together into one final video. And that's going to be the end result of this course. And like I said before, I'll also have the self-hosting and the Google authentication parts at the very end. So if you want to do either of those two steps. Alrighty guys, we have the final project for this video completely done. I just built this over the last hour. It's pretty amazing, and I'm going to provide it to you completely for free as a file in the description. You can click these three dots, and then you can click import from file, and then use that file and import this yourself, and then just set it up. However, I highly recommend you create a separate project where you import it so you have access to all the details that you need, but you do go through manually and build it yourself, so you know with all the skills you learned in this video, you can finally build something like this completely on your own. So the first thing you're going to need is a blank document with the test workflow. And by the way, one more part. This is broken up into 3 steps. We have the prompt generator, which is a little bit different and more advanced than the one I did earlier in this video. Then we have the VO3 generations part, which is going to be creating each one of the prompts into a video using VO3 via a new API. And then the third part is going to be stitching all those videos together to make one longer video, and that's going to be the create full video part. Now you can create these little sticky notes, by the way, by hitting that button over there. You can make them smaller, bigger, change the colors, just if you wanted to know how to do that. But let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need is this test workflow button trigger that we've used in plenty of other ones. Then you're going to hit the plus, and then you're going to need the AI agent, which should look just like this. When you enter it here, you're not going to have these two things yet. Going to open it up. We're going to say require specific output. Once we do that, you'll have a little output tree right here. You're going to connect that to an OpenAI, you're going to connect that to the structured output parser. So it'll connect just like that. Just put it up here to make it look fancy. And what you're going to want to do is enter the text like, and then what you're going to want to do is enter the text just like this. It's going to be giving us a JSON with prompts, and that's going to have an array. You're just going to have 1, 2, 3. So this would be example. You could just copy it in from my template if you want. And basically what that's going to do is going to make sure that it always outputs us data just like that, because it's important. And then for the chat model, you're going to hit the plus right there. You're going to connect the OpenAI chat model, and I have it on GPT 4.1. Doesn't really matter what you have it with. You just have to make sure your OpenAI account is connected. And once we have that, we're going to open up the AI agent. So we have our source prompt is defined below, so this is what's going to happen every time. So if you simply want more prompts, you can just iterate this. You can put like create 10 prompts or whatever, and that's what this user message is right here. And the reason we only need this is because down here we have the system message. Now this is a system message that I created, and it's essentially a template. So it says you are a prompt generator for high quality VO3 ASMR prompts, you know, blah blah blah. Replace object with the description of a glass fruit and create as many prompts as the user asks for. And then you can see this is the template here. So my recommendation is you create a good template that you test on VO3 manually before you do any automations. And then once you have that, you can make these like little areas where it says like object, for example, in this one, and then you have it replace it with something else. And the main reason we're doing it with this one AI agent is because all 5 outputs, we don't want it to come up with like apple, banana. And if we do each prompt one by one, there is a chance that it is going to overlap with the other ones because it doesn't remember making the other ones. But because we're creating all 5 in the same, we should be good. And basically, part of the structure is it's going to have a lot of the same ASMR text like this, and that's just so the consistency is the same. So it's like a themed video where it's always being cut, but it's like what type of glass fruit or whatnot is going to be different. So this part is the part you can play around with the most. You could, for example, switch this with my VO3 ad generator scripts that I have in my other videos, and basically what that is it creates a nice narration part for each thing. So it'll be a person saying blah 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 that looks like blah blah blah, and those will always be very consistent. So this is the type of thing where you can go into this and change it to whatever you want. If you want to make content about people talking about religion, you can do that. If you want it to be ASMR fruit, like this example, you can do it. I'm specifically doing the ASMR fruit because I think the consistency of the output is going to be the best. And if we stitch 5 together, it will be more or less a good video, regardless of parts are a little wonky or whatnot. But this is the thing that you can probably put the most effort into changing, and that will create a different style of video. But just keep in mind, you want the require specific outputs on, and you need this system message because it's extremely important. Now, the next step right here is the split out. This is one that's kind of similar to the batches one. I'm going to pop that open now, and all we're going to do is do the output.prompts as the fields to split, and it's going to include all the other fields, and it'll make more sense once I run the automation. But you'll see right here, you'll see right here that it's going to be outputting all the prompts in a list like this. So this is just going to split it out into a bunch of items, and then all those items are just going to be added to the Google Sheets. So we have this new Google Sheets final project. We have prompt status URL. So basically I'll just run it and you'll see what I mean here. All right, really quick, I disconnected the prompt generator from the VO3 generations from the create full video so we can go step by step. I'll then at the end relink them to show that the entire thing works at once. So I'm going to just be running it one more time for demo. As you can see, the agent is spinning up and it should be done soon. And there we go. So basically it's outputting one item as all 5 of these prompts, and then the next one is splitting out. So essentially in this section, we just dragged in this to right here. So what it's doing is it's splitting all these out into separate objects or items, and then those 5 items are all going into Google Sheets, and then they're all being entered here with the status of to do. So now that we go to the sheet, you'll see we have this description, and right there, this one is about a pomegranate, this one is about a glass banana, and as you can see, all of them are different fruits for our video, which is the whole point. So this successfully generated these 5 prompts right here, and now we're going to go to the next part, which is going to be generating those into videos. So for this section right here, just the one thing to keep in mind is if you're asking for 5 prompts, you're going to want 5 items being sent over to the Google Doc. Every once in a while this can mess up and give you data that can't be split out properly. If that's the case, I just recommend rerunning it again. And then ordinarily this would just be linked to this node, but we're manually testing it, so I'm going to link it over here. Okay, I filmed this section and then I found a bug, so I fixed that bug. You may notice it looks a little bit different, but this is going to work much better. So I'm going to be going over the VO3 generation section of this automation. The first thing we're getting is this Google Sheets. We're going to this Google Sheets and we're getting all the to-dos. So you'll notice right here that in testing I made these 3 files, but then there's 2 that are left on to-do. So I'll be showing you that it works now by running those 2. So essentially it's going to grab those 2. This is for the output of last time. So you'll see as an example as I explain it, and then I'll be running it. So over here, you'll notice that it has the row number, prompt, making sure that the status is to do, and then it's going to loop over, and then we're going to go to this HTTP node. And one thing you'll notice right here in the URL is this is not replicate or fal. This is another service, and it's key AI. And you can see here's all my generations. But if we go to the playground VO3, this website is great because they give you the cheapest alternative to doing VO3 videos. Ordinarily, the API is very expensive. Through File and Replicate, it's like $6 per video. So to stitch a bunch together, you'll be racking up tons of money. But in this case, we can use VO3 Fast for only 40 cents per clip. So that's what we're going to be doing. So you know the drill. Go to kie.ai, make your account, get your API key, load it up with some credits. Once you've done that, we'll go into here, same thing, generic credential type, header auth, key AI. The name is just authorization. The value is bearer space your API key, and similar to replicate. Once that's set up, you're going to need this on all of the nodes for that. We're going to be sending a body. The body type is going to be JSON, using fields below to make it easy. Prompt, we're just passing in the prompt that we got from the Google Doc. So it's going to be pulled in here, and keep in mind it's going to be looping over each one, so that's going to be dynamic. And then we have name model value VO3 underscore fast. That's going to be the cheap model, and then this is going to be the request that really makes our AI videos. So this is pretty much the most important one. As you can see, it will give you the message success if it was successfully processing, but that doesn't mean that it's done, and that's where I was tripped up in the automation. So we're going to send that to a wait node. This one we have at 30 seconds. And then the next one is going to be check if ready. And basically we have this URL, and this part took me a little while too. And basically the URL we had before with a question mark, task, capital ID equals, and then we dragged in the task ID here. And then we have this stuff. I don't think this is important. This is just what auto entered for me. But what is important is that your key AI credentials are set up here, and then this will give the output. And keep in mind, this is the final output, so it's going to output some of this stuff without this result URLs. So basically, the next step is an if, and then the false just goes back over to the wait right there, so it'll retry. And I just dragged in this result URLs right into here. And then I just said, if this exists, continue. So that's the solution that I found, because if it doesn't exist, we don't want to add it to the Google Doc because it doesn't exist. So it's just going to wait until it does exist. And then once it does, every 30 seconds, it usually only takes like 2 or 3 minutes. So this will loop a few times. And then boom, it's going to go to Google Sheets on this sheet. Very similar to how we've done it a million times before. Same exact sheet. It's going to match on row number. We're pulling in the row number from the beginning, and keep in mind that's going to change depending on what rotation it's on. Then we have prompt. We're not going to be changing that, of course. We're going to set the status to done. Now this is important for 2 reasons. 1, so it doesn't loop over the same thing again because it's to do. And then 2, because at the end we're actually going to be using done to make sure to stitch it into the final video. And then URL is the URL that we checked that existed, but it's this result URL right here. So it's going to pop that in, and as you can see, it ran 3 times here. So I'll show you what those look like. We have, I believe this is the pomegranate. So we have that first video. We have the banana. That looks pretty satisfying there. And then we have, I believe this is the pear. The top part is not in frame, but that part is definitely pretty satisfying. And then the to do, we have the strawberry and the pineapple. So yeah, so it's going to enter this in, and then it'll loop over to the next item, go through the entire process, and then when it's done, it will eventually connect it to the next module, which is creating the full video. But I'm just going to hit test workflow right here, and as you can see, we got 2 items, and currently it's processing the first video. In a few minutes that will be done, and then I'll do the second video, and then I'll pause and fast forward to when all the videos are done. Okay, as you can see right here, all the videos are now done. The one thing to keep in mind, if you don't have this thing to drag over and you haven't used my template, Just make sure to give it like 5 minutes for it to actually generate, then test this node one more time, and then once you test this node, you should be able to drag this in and be good to go. So hopefully everything is good with this section. Now normally once this is all done with all the batching, it will then create the full video. So we're going to drag our trigger down to show you how this last part goes. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm just going to test it, let it run all the way through, and then once we're done, I'm going to explain what was going on in this step. So let's just run that. It's going to pull all our videos from the sheet. It's going to combine the URLs, write some special code that I got an AI to build for me, and then we're just stitching them all together, and then we should be dropping that output onto our Google Doc, and then I'll go in and explain how everything worked. Okay, this part actually only took like 30 seconds and probably only cost us a cent or less. Super convenient. Basically what happens, I hop back into my final project Google Doc, and you'll notice the last line says final video, the status is final, and then if I open this up, you'll see we have all of our videos. So we have 5 8-second videos. They're all stitched together, and you can watch the entire video here, and you probably get the point. If you need to make a longer video or you want to make a compilation AI video, that's how you do it. You can make it as many as you want long. Going back to here, it just really depends on how many prompts you have the agent create in the very beginning, and then how many generations you make, and then the full stitching is super simple and happens quite fast. In fact, we're using one more service, and that's FFmpeg on FAL. It's a little bit complicated, but I'll kind of explain what it is. Basically, you just give it all the videos, the IDs, the timestamps, and then it just stitches them together into one longer video. And you can run this on your computer yourself, although it's way complicated to set up. It's super simple to use them, and as you can see, it uses a fraction of a cent for every second computing, and it doesn't take a long time. So I think every request is like under a cent worth of compute, because we're not like utilizing AI or anything. We're just simply stitching them together, and it's actually super simple. There's only one complex part, and I had the AI figure that all out for me. So basically, we'll go through the nodes now that they're generated. You have this pull from sheet node. Same exact thing. We've done it 100 times now in this video, but this time we're filtering for status done, because we only want the videos that are done, or the columns that are done, because they have the actual corresponding videos. So super important that the other one labels them done to start. As you can see, these are all labeled done. So combining URLs. So basically, you're just going to take this code from my template. It's a JavaScript code that takes all these 5 items and their URL equivalent, and then it puts them into this type of file system. It's a little bit confusing. Basically, this is an array of videos versus this is 5 separate items with all of these, and we're basically just extracting the URLs because that's the only important part. This is probably the most complex part from a programmatic standpoint, but if you just copy this and make sure that this URL matches the URL that should just be on this cell. So if your cell is just named URL, everything should work well with this code. We're basically just manipulating the data right there. And then for this second code block, I actually had Claude make it. The nice thing is you can just take it from me completely for free with the template, and explaining how this all works is a little bit complicated and would take a little bit of time. But what I will say right here is basically this 8 and this 8 right here, you want to switch to however long all your clips are. So because we're using VO3, all of our clips are 8 seconds, so we're just going to be having these two as 8. If your videos are 5 seconds, you're just going to switch both of these videos to 5 seconds, and I'll try to do a little bit more of an explanation, but basically this is outputting just one giant JSON file that we can then send to FFmpeg, and it's going to do everything for us. So for example here, this is our last generation. Basically it's saying the track, like the first ID, the first video we're putting in at 0 seconds, and it's going to go to 8, and then the second one is going to go from 8 seconds and it's going to have 8 second duration, and then the third one is going to start at 16 seconds and it's going to have an 8-second duration, and you get the point. So basically this is just the format FFmpeg needs to combine all the tracks. So basically if you just copy all this, make sure 8 or whatever is lined up. If you want to use a different video generator that does like 5 seconds, you just make sure that these are 5s each. And then make sure everything is the same in terms of like what they're named and everything. So if you use the code and you use the URL right there, everything should be good. It's going to output that giant blob, which, as you can see on the playground, is just this kind of recipe to make the long video. And this is all done in JavaScript, and I did this a few weeks ago for a different video, and I was basically just asking Claude how to do it. And I'm going to show some of those more advanced stuff and maybe a more advanced full video interacting with Claude and ChatGPT to really get you to write the code that you need for these automations. But for this one, this template I have right here, like I said, if you just change the 8s to however long everything is, you should be good to go. And then we're going to be doing that create the full video. We're going to be using our FAL account because this is a service through FAL. So we're just putting in the ffmpeg URL for FAL. And then sending body content type is going to be raw, and then content type is going to be application/JSON, and then we're just basically dumping in that entire output from the last node. And then same thing with all the other stuff. It's going to show as in queue initially, and then we're just going to do that wait for 20 seconds. Now ffmpeg works pretty quickly. I think usually it works on like the first one, so it only takes 20 seconds, but we're going to be checking statuses. So we're just going to pull that status URL, same credentials for FAL, making sure to wait for completed. Then, like we had, this error if statement yet again. This time it's just going to be json.status. If that's equal to completed, then we know we're good. Then we're just going to be getting that final video. So we're just going to be going to this URL with this request ID. The request ID that we sent over to them, just going to be pulling that into URL at the very end, and then they'll give us the final video URL and the final thumbnail. We don't really need the thumbnail, so we're just going to go to our sheet, do what we do all the time, and we're actually, this time it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be appending a row because this doesn't have to do with any existing row. We need it to be a new row, so we're going to be appending a row. Just going to be filling in final video. Now keep in mind, you could do this, like you could create a separate sheet if you want these to generate somewhere else so they don't kind of like overlap, but for simplicity's sake I just have it be a final video that's just the same row below all the clips, and then we're just setting the status to final. This doesn't really matter as long as it's not to do or done and it messes up with the rest of the automation. And then the URL is the URL that we got from the Git. And then once we do that, like I said, it's going to pop it in here. You will have that final video, and then I'll be playing the final video now. Congratulations, you have completed the entire tutorial. This took me probably like 20 hours to record and edit. So here we go. Then this is the one that you didn't see before that was generated, the strawberry. And then finally we have the pineapple. And that is the final video. And then if we go back to this right here, we can just wire this up to the beginning, wire first module to second module, wire the ending of the second module to the third module, and then when I hit test workflow, it will generate me my 5 prompts, it will generate me my 5 videos, it will stitch them together, it will make a final video right here, and everything will be complete. Now one thing to keep in mind is your prompt is super important. Like going through this and creating really good prompts is really going to change the output. I just went with ASMR because I know all those videos will be decent, and you could just upload this kind of slop onto YouTube if you wanted, and it'll probably get some views. You can make better ASMR prompts and like a prompt bot with a better input and better templates and stuff like that. But in the end, the creativity is completely up to you. Now I'm going to have two segments like I talked about before. The first segment is going to teach you how to set up the self-hosting if you want to do that. And then the second segment is going to teach you how to connect Google Drive as well as Gmail, Google Sheets, all those if you're self-hosting. Okay, now I'm going to be teaching you how to self-host N8N if you want, and this will allow you to do it for as low as $6 per month. Keep in mind, I highly recommend you do the starter plan with N8N. It's much more simple. I have my affiliate code below, but if you want to go ahead and host it on your own, it's definitely an option. We're going to be doing it on DigitalOcean, and you're going to need a domain name to do this, but all you're going to have to do is go to marketplace.digitalocean.com and then search N8N, which will get you this N8N template. You're then going to hit create N8N droplet, and droplet is just like a little server, and you're going to want to hit the location closest to you. So I did San Francisco. You'll see right here it's going to custom install it with N8N, and then on this part right here we're going to do basic. We're going to switch it to regular, so it's going to be a little bit slower. And then we're going to go to the very first option, which is the $6 a month option. We don't need any backups or anything like that. We just need to create a root password right here. Alright, so I created a password and put it in there. We don't have to do anything else. We just have to hit create droplet. And if you don't already have a project, I just had one and I just created a first project right there. And now the droplet will be spinning up, and once it's loaded, we can move on to the next step. Okay, once your droplet has spun up, you'll have its IP address right there, and then all you have to do is go to your domain register. I use Namecheap and I have a ton of domains. If you don't have one, I recommend you register something cheap like a .xyz. That's only like $1 or $2 per year, or you buy a .com that you can also use for other stuff. And then you're going to go to domain list. You're going to go to the domain you want to set up. This is going to be where you type in your browser every time you want to edit N8N. Then you're going to go to advanced DNS, and then over here you're going to have to hit add new record. It's going to be an A record. The host is going to be N8N, and then the value is going to be the IP address from your droplet, and then the TTL you could do at pretty much whatever, but I did it for 20 minutes. And once you have all that set up, you can go back to DigitalOcean. Now back on DigitalOcean, you're going to hit these three dots, and then you're going to hit Access Console, which will pop this open right here, and you're just going to pop up and hit Launch Console. And then the first question it's going to ask is what subdomain you want, and I'm just going to hit Enter, which is going to default to N8N. And then you're going to have to type in your domain name, the one you connected. So I'm just going to be typing durso.io. Then I'm going to hit Enter. Now you're going to need to put your email. This is going to be important to logging in later on. So I'm going to put my email here. And then, would you like to configure a time zone? We're not going to do that now, but you can. And then right here it's going to be installing, and then in a couple of minutes it should be ready to go. Okay, it's finished, and now it's giving us our domain that we can access our server on. So we're just going to go there. And then it showed a blank page, but then I went a few seconds later and it works. Keep in mind, your DNS could take a little while to set up, and then second of all, the server could also. Now you're going to have to set up your new account, and what that means is put all your information here again. Now for this password, make sure that you remember it and make sure it has all the requirements. Then we're going to be hitting next here, and then boom, this is going to ask you some questions. I'm just going to put education, business owner, myself, And then here you can get free paid features by just putting your email in and getting the license key. So I'm going to be doing that now, and then you can finish that up later. But congratulations, you now have your N8N. I'm going to create a new workflow, and this is going to lead into my Google authentication section, which you will need to do for certain Google apps like Google Drive, even if you're not self-hosted, but if you are self-hosted, you'll need it for every single Google app. Okay, so basically, normally on a lot of websites, you can click a sign in with Google button, just enter your information, and everything works perfectly fine. However, if you are self-hosted, that will not work because you will need to be setting up the back end of that. And now that sounds a little bit complicated, and it is, but just follow this exact tutorial. And you're also going to need this for Google Drive, even on N8N's one. So we're going to have to go through and do it. But keep in mind, when you do this, it will work for Google Sheets, Google Mail, as well as Google Drive all in one. But I'm going to be doing the Google Drive portion. So we're going to be popping up a Google Drive node. And you'll see this is a brand new N8N, so I don't have any credentials. And yeah, so you normally have this just like sign in button here. But in this case you don't. So what you're going to need to do is go to the Google Cloud Console, which you can just Google to get to. And this is a brand new email address, or at least one that I haven't used in a long time. And I'm going to be showing you how to set this up. So we're going to do a new project right here. And then the project can be honestly whatever you want. We're just going to call it N8N test. And then we're going to wait for that project to spin up. So the next thing we're going to do is just hit select project right here. And then on the search, we're going to search for Drive. We should have the Google Drive API. We're just going to hit enable on that. And wait for that to go through. Now we're going to search Gmail. Go to the Gmail API, enable that as well. And then we're going to search for, I believe it's Sheets, Google Sheets API, enable that. Now that you have all three enabled, when you do this whole thing, it will be able to connect all three, although you'll have to, in N8N for each node, reconnect, but you'll at least be able to sign in with Google. So the next part we're going to do is the OAuth ourselves. So we're going to go into that OAuth consent screen right there. And then we're going to hit get started. So for the first two parts, we're just going to name it N8N test, and then we're just going to select the email that we're logged into right now, and then we're going to hit next. Okay, and then we're going to hit external here, hit next, enter another email address, doesn't matter what it is, finish and agree, and then hit create. And then here we're going to hit create OAuth, then we're going to hit web application, and we could just leave the name as the default. Now we're going to go back to N8N. We're going to copy this OAuth redirect URL. We're going to go to this URI. We're going to paste it in to right here, and then we're going to hit create. So now we're going to set ourselves as a test user. So we're just going to go to audience, hit add users, type in the email address associated with the Google account we need to sign in with. We're going to hit save right there. So then we're going to go over to clients, click on this first client that we created right here, and then this is the information that we need. So we're going to take this secret, then we're going to go into N8N, paste it right here, then we're going to go back, then we're going to take this client ID up here, copy it, paste it into here, and then that should pop up this sign in with Google. I'm going to hit that button right there. Going to make sure to go to the account associated with what we did before. Okay, and it's going to pop up a few things. You're going to have to say that you trust yourself, which is kind of funny, but obviously this is your authentication. And then you're just going to check mark on all the permissions that you see, especially with the Google Drive ones. And then you're going to hit and I kept on getting issues because it kept on asking me for text message codes and whatnot for my Google account, but once I did it all the way through, it worked, and you'll see right here it says account connected, so everything should be good to go. And it looks like you made it all the way to the end. Congratulations. Make sure to subscribe to my email newsletter at adrian.co/subscribe. We'll be sending some valuable information every time new AI models drop, like we just got Hailuo 2, C-Dance, VO3 updates, all of that, as well as certain niches that people are getting millions of followers and certain advertisements that work really well with AI. And then again, x.com/mentor is my X, and I definitely appreciate anyone following there. And linked there too, I have my Telegram group, and I highly recommend you join this if you want to stay up to date. Anyways, I'm going to have some of my other videos linked below that now you should be a master and be able to complete with ease. Make sure to check them out, and I'll see you guys later.